Today I'm going to show you how to make different types of labels using Cricut Design Space. Once I load up Design Space, I'm going to click on New Project in the top right hand corner and then click on the text button on the left. When you first click on that text button, it's going to have a highlighted box around it. This means that I can now edit what I want this label to say. As long as the cursor is still flashing at the end, I can keep changing the text. Once I click out of this, it will be replaced by these little white boxes, which means that I'm now in manipulate mode. If I want to retype something, I just double click and that pink box will appear. That color box may be different on your screen. Now there are a few different things that I can do to change this label. The first thing I can do is click on the label and drag it to anywhere on my canvas. I prefer to keep my labels on the right hand side of the canvas so that when I start looking at different fonts, I can have a preview of what they look like. Let me show you what that looks like. After you click on the label and you've got these white squares around the outside, I can click up here to the font menu. You will see that some of these fonts have little green A's next to them. This A means that it's part of the Cricut Access subscription. So if you haven't paid for the subscription, you won't be able to use these fonts without paying a fee. In order to see the different types of fonts that you have access to, if you don't have a subscription, you can click on this little filters button at the top and select free. This will now give you a whole lot of fonts that are free to use without a subscription. There are 4 different sets of fonts that you can choose from. The first is Cricut, and they are the fonts that are built into Cricut Design Space. The second is System. These are the fonts that are built into your computer. So generally these will be the ones that are available through, say, Microsoft Word or something else that you'll use there. The third is your bookmarked. So anytime that you select a font in Cricut or System that you like and you think you'll use a lot of, you can click on this little bookmark button to the right and it will appear in your bookmarked fonts. Recent fonts will also be those that you've experimented with or used recently, regardless of if they are bookmarked or not. For this label, I'm going to select the American Typewriter font. Once you've selected your font and you see the preview over here, you can close the font window and click and drag your label to move it around on the canvas. Now, there's a few other things that we can do to this label as well. The first is that we can change the color by clicking on this button here. Now, there are some colors that are already preset into the system, but you can also select your own color by clicking on that advanced plus there. This will allow you to move this toggle so that you can choose different colors. Might make it easier if you're using lots of different types of cardboard or vinyls with lots of different colors. Once you've chosen your color and you like how it looks, you can just click into the canvas and it will take you back. To select the label again, just click on it and those white boxes will appear. Make it bigger and smaller using the size buttons up here. This is particularly important if you're making labels. So let's say this label will be 8 centimeters wide. And because this little padlock is on, it means that it will automatically change the width, change the height to whatever it needs to be. I can also rotate my label by using these toggles here, but you may not need to because once it's printed, you could rotate it however you want. You can also resize and rotate using these little diagonal boxes around the outside of the label on the canvas. Hover your mouse over it and you'll see that the arrow will change to a little diagonal arrow. You can then click and drag it and it will make it bigger or smaller. The other thing you can do here is rotate the label. Move your mouse just outside that little box. So where you've got your diagonal boxes on either of the corners, you'll get the arrow. If you just move your mouse out just a little bit further, this curved arrow will appear. If you then click and drag on that one, it will allow you to rotate your label. Another thing that you may want to do to make curved labels is using this curve button up here. Once you click on this button, you can click and drag this little circle in the middle to the left or the right to change the shape of your label. So if you're putting this on like a jar lid or around a water bottle, you may want to change this curve. And you can just click and drag until you're happy with it. Once you're finished, again, just click onto the canvas and it will set. Another thing you can do through Cricut Design Space is to unattach each of the letters so that you can manipulate them individually. What I mean by that is if you click on this advanced button up the top here, there will be an option to ungroup to letters. What this means, as you can see on the layers panel over here, is that each letter is now its own layer. So if I click out of that box and go back and click just on the B, I can then move this B up and down or move it out or whatever I want to do to it without it affecting the rest of the label. I can also change individual letter colors up the top here, and I can also resize them. So if I want the L to be bigger than everything else, I can change things and move things around that way. Something else that you might like to do to even it out or to make it fit into different places is to increase the letter spacing. So up here, you can increase the letter spacing by clicking the up button, and you'll see that the letters start to separate a little bit more. You can move it down as much as you want as well. Offset is a function that people use a lot of the time, mainly for images and shapes and things like that, but also for labels, especially if you're going to be making cake toppers or things where you want a background. By clicking the offset button, you can see that it will automatically default to 0.635 centimeters. And if you have your design space set to inches, this will be a different figure. To change the offset, you can click and drag this button up and down to see what it looks like, or you can type up in this box here. You can see the blue line, that's going to be your offset. So if you stretch that out a little bit more, make it quite big and hit apply, it then has an offset around it. To change the color of the offset, click on that color panel at the top and change it to whatever color you would like. It will default to black. If you want to duplicate this label, let's say that you're making a whole lot of labels for your pantry or something where you need lots of them and you've made the first one perfect, click on the label and you can do a couple of different things. You can click on this little button up here, which is duplicate, or you can also click Control D on your keyboard and that will duplicate the labels. Now let's create 4 labels with the skills that I've taught you. The first one is a basic label. I click on text, I change the word to basic, and I'm going to move this around my canvas and change the color. The second label I'm going to make is an offset label. So I'm going to duplicate this label here, move it around. I'm going to double click on it and change it to offset. And then I'm going to add an offset up the top here. The next label, I'll duplicate this again. I will call this a circular label. This time I'm going to change the color. I'm going to change the size of it, and I'm going to add a curve. Lucky last, I'm going to make a split letter label. For this, I'm going to click on text, type the word that I want. I will change the color up here, and then I will go to advanced and ungroup to letters. What this means now is that I can click out of it and individually manipulate each letter by moving them up and down. If you've seen my previous videos about the layer panel, which is this part over here, you will understand what the attach function does. But if you're not familiar with it, let me show you. If I try to cut this label as is, Cricut is going to try and optimize my cutting mat so that it fits the most amount of letters into the smallest amount of room. That is because at the moment, Cricut thinks this word is 5 individual layers and that I don't have a preference on how they're situated on the mat. Let me show you what that means. When I click Make It, you can see that my letters have just been put in a random order, and this is so that it's optimized on the mat so that I can use the lowest amount of vinyl for this project. But I want it to come out looking how I've set it out on the canvas. What I need to do is select all the letters by clicking and dragging over all of the letters on the canvas and clicking Attach down the bottom. Not only does this mean it's now easier for me to move it around on the canvas, but when I go to make it, Cricut now knows this is how I want it to be cut when it's printed on the mat. And there you have it, 4 basic labels using Cricut Design Space. If you have any ideas for tutorials that you would like to see, please drop me a comment below. Thank you for watching.